But now, with the whirling world and the dark world joining forces, could he still protect this universe? As if thinking of something, he opened his palm and 6 scrolls of Tao scripture appeared in his hand. Yi Jiming suddenly said, "What's your plan? Hand it over?" Yi Xian shook his head. It's useless to hand it over. Because their goal is not only the Tao scripture but also this universe. Yi Jiming said in a low voice, "Compared to the whirling world, the 5th dimension and the doubting are too weak. As for the ancient god Abyss, as Venerable Mi said, if they pay too much they will most likely retreat." Yi Xian was silent. Yi Jiming said again, "Do you want to use this Tao scripture to make them kill each other?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Impossible. Those people are not stupid. If I do that, I will only give away the Tao scripture for nothing." Yi Jiming said, "Whirling school?" Yi Xian still shook his head. "The whirling sect is powerful but they only want my Taoist scripture. They won't really help me. Even if they help me they will only help me. They won't help the entire 5-dimensional universe. They will even give up the 5th dimension to ease the relationship with other forces. In short, they will not rely on others." Yi Jiming said in a low voice, "Can you contact the woman in the plain dress?" Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. He could not sense the woman at all. Yi Jiming said in a low voice, "This time is not like before. If the difference in strength between us is too great, the 5th dimension might become chaotic." Yi Xian nodded. This was also the problem he was most worried about. If the whirling world and the dark world joined hands, the 5th dimension would not be able to resist. In this situation, many experts in the 5th dimension might collapse. But this was normal because the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Yi Jiming said, "What are your plans?" Yi Xian was silent. After a while he looked at the Tao scripture in his hand. This Tao scripture was a hot potato. Actually, if it was only because of the Tao scripture, it would be easy to deal with. But the problem was not only the Tao scripture. The whirling world built the teleportation array to invade this universe and take it for themselves. As if he thought of something, Yi Xian squinted his eyes. Teleportation array. Yi Jiming said solemnly, "If the teleportation array can't be built, then the whirling world won't pose much of a threat to us. If there is only dark abyss, then ancient god Abyss won't have to sacrifice too much and the situation will become advantageous to us. Of course, the prerequisite is to stop them from building the teleportation array." Yi Xian suddenly kept the Tao scripture and came to Seven's room. Yi Xian said solemnly, "Seven, I want you to help me find someone." Seven looked at Yi Xian. "Who?" Yi Xian said a few words and moments later, Seven got up and left. Currently, if the ancient god Abyss retreated, the 5th dimension would not be able to fight back. Why did the whirling world and the ancient god Abyss join hands? It was because they wanted to deal with the forces behind him. However, he was aggrieved because he did not know what forces were behind him. What forces were behind him? Yi Xian was also a little confused. He only knew of Qin. As for the others, he wasn't familiar with them, including the ant from the Netherworld Hall who had come earlier. Thinking of this, Yi Xian sighed softly. Why did he feel like a scapegoat? At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was the Sky Sovereign. The Sky Sovereign looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "You are very calm. If I'm not wrong, you must have contacted the people behind you. Am I right?" Yi Xian was silent. He wanted to curse. "Contact. I will contact your mother. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang." The one who spoke was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. "Why?" At this moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was afraid and didn't dare to look at the great elder, but she didn't leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the mining rights in Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan and we don't know if he's dead or alive. But the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly said angrily, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide whether to discard him or not. Men drag her away. At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly smiled and said, she should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder said coldly, then flog her 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew it was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the position of crown prince. Why are you shouting? As he said this, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. The right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. But she didn't cry. She just held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, I'm Zhang Mu. Greetings, crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the crown prince I'll need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply, I'm willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly, drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy. Do you understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped when he saw something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking toward the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. This young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked up to Yi Ling. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. In the sky, Yi Xian smiled again and said, everyone, it is I, Yi Xian, who does not have the ability to protect everyone in this part of the universe. It has nothing to do with you. Below, an old man suddenly said in a trembling voice, Tao Master, why don't you escape? If you escape, with your talent, you might be able to contend against these people in the future. Escape? Yi Xian smiled lightly. They won't let me escape. Of course I won't escape either. As he said that, he turned to look at Nian Nian beside him and said with a smile, I swore to you before. At that time, I said that I would live and die with the 5-dimensional universe in the future. Although I was just playing tricks at that time, I never thought that this oath would actually come true. Nian Nian nodded slightly. She tightly held onto Yi Xian's hand. I will go with you. Yi Xian smiled. Okay. As he spoke, he looked at Dao City below. Everyone stop wasting time. Let's go. Below, many people hesitated for a moment before fleeing one after another. This was a battle that they had no chance of winning. But there were still some people who stayed. Of course there were not many. Yi Xian suddenly looked at Venerable Me. At this moment, an old man appeared beside Venerable Me. The person who came was Bai Dizzy. Bai Dizzy said softly, they can let those people below go, but they won't let us go. Yi Xian looked at Bai Dizzy and smiled. Bai Dizzy, as far as I know, your escaping skills are top-notch. Why don't you escape? Bai Dizzy looked at Yi Xian. You are doubting's only hope. If you die, then doubting really doesn't exist anymore. If doubting is gone, there is not much meaning in me living. So, let me accompany you to death." Yi Xian was speechless. Venerable Me suddenly said, "Bai Dizzy is right. You are the doubting's last hope. If you perish today, then doubting will have no more hope. If doubting has no more hope, then what's the point of us living?" As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. "Today, let us accompany you on your last journey." Yi Xian smiled. Then he said, "I didn't expect that we would have to live and die together today. Life is so wonderful." As he spoke, he gazed at Enlancio and the others. His gaze swept past them with a complicated expression. "I really want to let all of you go, but I know that all of you definitely won't." When he spoke up to this point, he grinned. "All of you wanted to return the favor in the afterlife, but I feel like they won't allow me to have an afterlife. So I'm sorry. If there is a next life, please don't meet a man like me. Even I feel like I'm trash." Zhang Wenxiu gazed at Yi Xian. "You've finally spoken the truth." Yi Xian laughed. He glanced at the women again and said, "I don't want to see all of you die because that would be worse than death. So, let me die before all of you." As he spoke, he looked up at Venerable Qinji and the others and said softly, "I want to defy the heavens and change my fate." While Yi Xian was digesting those formidable souls, the white-robed woman suddenly turned around to gaze at the members of the whirling world. Meanwhile, an old man walked forward. The old man bowed slightly to the white-robed woman. "I am Xiao Pingxing from the Xiao clan." "Greetings, senior." The white-robed woman suddenly punched out. Boom. Xiao Pingxing died instantly. His soul was annihilated. Everyone was speechless. At this moment, the remaining experts of the whirling world were shocked to the extreme. It was an instant kill. It wouldn't be so terrifying if it was just a victory. But it was an instant kill. A peak consolidation realm expert didn't even have the ability to fight back. At this moment, Hu Bugui from the Dao returning courtyard suddenly said. Bugui suddenly said, "Retreat." With that, he turned around and fled. They could only flee. They had no chance against the white-robed god of death. The white-robed woman glanced at Hu Bugui. "Did I allow you to flee?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly punched out. Boom. In the distance, Hu Bugui's expression changed drastically. He suddenly turned around and punched out. He knew he couldn't beat her, but he had to fight. If he didn't fight, he would definitely die. If he fought, he might have a chance to live. Boom. As soon as Hu Bugui punched out, a powerful force swept out from his fist like a tide. However, in the next moment, this powerful force vanished without a trace. At the same time, his entire body was forcefully wiped out by a powerful force. It was directly wiped out. The white-robed woman didn't stop. She suddenly pointed with her finger and the executing heaven sword flew out. The next moment, a ray of sword light pierced through the air and traveled tens of thousands of miles. The sword traveled tens of thousands of miles. In the sky, bloody heads kept falling. Seeing this scene, Suzhou and the others who were hiding in the dark looked extremely fearful. One should know that the whirling sect in the Dark Abyss had dozens of Consolidation Realm experts and more than 100 Dao Attainment Realm experts. However, these people were like vegetables being chopped up. They didn't even have the ability to fight back. That sword directly killed dozens of Dao Attainment Realm and Consolidation Realm experts. This strength. Suzhou wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He once again looked at Yi Xian, who was still absorbing souls not far away. "This young master, yes, sister. I don't know how many sisters he has. It's too scary." On the other side, the Lord and the others were silent. They had to admit that they had been dealt a heavy blow. What was a strong expert? This was a strong expert. As for themselves, they were as weak as chickens in front of such a strong expert. On the other side, Shenchu was also watching this scene. In front of her stood a woman. It was Yu Zun, who had come into contact with Yi Xian before. Li Shanshui and the others had extremely strange expressions on their faces. Damn it. She really knows how to talk. Needless to say, the whirling sect had really become the biggest winner. Because the whirling sect hadn't suffered any losses this time. Actually, they'd come to an understanding now. The reason the whirling sect hadn't joined forces with them was definitely because they knew how formidable the person standing behind Yi Xian was, so they refused to cooperate with them. But this woman just refused to tell them. She'd caused them to be practically annihilated. She was too treacherous. Yi Xian glanced at Yu Shi. He didn't refuse and he took the scripture and said, Sect Master Yu, I've gathered all 9 scriptures and I'm willing to share them with the whirling sect. Yushi blinked, really? Yi Xian nodded, of course. Yushi grinned, thank you young Master Yi. Actually she was really happy. Because even if Yi Xian didn't share them with the whirling sect, she wouldn't dare say anything. She didn't know if Yi Xian was really the master of the 9th dimension, but she knew that he was absolutely not an ordinary person. After Yi Xian put the scripture away, he glanced at everyone here. Everyone return to your respective residences. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Meanwhile, Li Shanshui hurriedly said, young Master Yi, we're all following you now. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, I'll look for all of you if I need anything. Li Shanshui hesitated for a moment and then he said, young Master Yi, I'll follow by your side. All the experts of the Black Hat sect had been killed, so it was utterly meaningless for him to stay in the whirling world. Yi Xian was about to speak when Li Shanshui added, young Master Yi, my Black Hat sect has been around for over 100,000 years, and we still have some finances. If young Master Yi doesn't mind, then I'll give them to young Master Yi. Yi Xian glanced at Li Shanshui, and the latter hurriedly said, I don't have any ill intentions. I just want to follow young Master Yi. Now Yi Xian was his only way out. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he nodded. All right. Li Shanshui hurriedly said, young Master Yi, please wait a moment. I'll go back and pack up. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yi Xian glanced at the experts of the Dao Returning Institute and the Shao clan in the distance. They didn't make a stand. He didn't force them. Obviously they wanted to stay in the whirling world and they didn't really want to follow Yi Xian. After all, no one liked to be the subordinate of another. Moreover, the white-robed woman and the swordsman had left. Right at this moment, the ancestor of the profound secret sect suddenly looked at Gu Wuchao and said angrily, what are you still looking at? Hurry up and pay your respects to young Master Yi. Are you trying to make me crawl out of my coffin from anger? Chapter 1445. Within the hall, Bai Dizzy sighed softly, and he had extremely complicated feelings in his heart. What sort of power was Dark City? He didn't know. But could a power that could casually take out tens of millions of divine fortune crystals as a gift be a small power? Moreover, such a formidable power had expressed goodwill to the 5th dimension just because of a woman in a plain dress. Could even be said to be slightly lowly. There was no need to think about it to know that the woman in a plain dress was absolutely formidable to the point of causing Dark City to feel despair. Moreover, he'd even sent people to kill her. When he thought up to here, he couldn't help but want to slap himself a few more times. How could I have been so stupid all those years ago? Yi Xian suddenly said, the important matter at hand is to figure out how many powers we don't know about, and we must figure out the ins and outs of these powers. Bai Dizzy nodded, yes. When he spoke up to here, he gazed at Yi Xian. Why didn't you ask Zhao Yan? Yi Xian smiled, he'll come back. Bai Dizzy was slightly stunned, and then he took a deep glance at Yi Xian. Brilliant. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'll go see how their study of the Taoist scripture is going. As soon as he finished speaking, he left the hall. Dark City. Zhao Yan stood respectfully in a garden somewhere, and a woman was playing chess not too far away from him. She had no opponent and was playing by herself. A short moment later, the woman spoke softly, he didn't accept the gift and even gave you the contents of the Taoist scripture? Zhao Yan nodded, yes. The woman chuckled, interesting. Zhao Yan hesitated for a moment and asked, what does he mean by that? The woman smiled, he means that he doesn't want to bully us. Zhao Yan came to an understanding when he heard this. To put it bluntly, they definitely made friends with Yi Xian because of the woman in a plain dress, and it was the same for the gift. Moreover, Yi Xian's actions were telling them that he, Yi Xian, wouldn't bully others. When he thought up to here, Zhao Yan couldn't help but have a good impression of Yi Xian. The woman suddenly put down the chess piece in her hand. She stood up and said with a smile, you go again. You don't need to bring any gifts. Zhao Yan said softly, just like that? The woman nodded. What he needs the most right now isn't worldly possessions, but an understanding of the various forces. Send him a copy of the detailed information of all the forces. Zhao Yan hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Taoism and the boundless Holy Land? The woman smiled and said, even if we don't send him off, he will find out soon enough. Zhao Yan nodded, understood. He paused for a moment before continuing, our people are still investigating the people behind young Master Yi. Should we continue investigating? The woman shook her head. No need. Zhao Yin bowed respectfully and was about to leave.